when I was 47 and I got my first hot flash, I was like, oh, am I in menopause? Like I had no idea all the symptoms I had experienced before were even related to perimenopause. I was like, oh, am I in menopause? Wait, isn't my grandmother in menopause? Like my mother? Am I that old? Am I no longer valid? And these are thoughts that went through my head.
Welcome to the Blueprint Breakers podcast. What is a blueprint breaker? If you live your life outside the typical traditional lifestyle blueprint, you are a blueprint breaker. We are here to start a conversation, to assemble resources, and to build a community. This podcast is for empowered women in midlife and beyond who are preparing for a powerful next era of life. My name is Amy A. Palmer. I am your host and facilitator for our conversations. Sit back, relax, enjoy the show. To stay connected, up to date, and to receive all of our free resources and gifts along the way, join us at community.blueprintbreakers.com. Is it menopause or is it something else? Check out my conversation with Andrea Donsky, known as the menopause educator and researcher to her over 340,000 TikTok followers. Andrea is a nutritionist on a mission to change the conversation around perimenopause and menopause. Andrea hosts the popular podcast Menopause Reimagined and appears as a menopause expert on television across North America. To date, Andrea has appeared in more than 500 TV segments and has been featured on every major network across the U.S. and Canada. Today, we dive into the complexities of menopause and perimenopause, sharing personal stories and professional insights. Discover the over 103 symptoms of menopause uncovered through groundbreaking community research and explore practical solutions from nutrition, lifestyle changes, and supplements. Whether it's managing hot flashes, night sweats, or brain fog, this episode offers hope, help, and self-compassion. And I would ask you, on behalf of myself and Andrea, share this episode with your younger friends. Women in their 30s and 40s need to hear this information so that they are better prepared for what's ahead than we were. Hello, Andrea. Nice to see you today. Welcome to Blueprint Breakers.
Hi, Amy. Thank you. I appreciate you having me on.
Well, I am excited to explore this topic today. Definitely a topic that's near and dear to my heart, like many of us. So before we get into sort of the nuts and bolts of everything, I'd love to hear a little bit about your story, your journey. You serve women in so many different ways, and I'm curious how it's taken the particular path that you're on now.
I have been in the health and wellness space now. It'll be actually 25 years in next year, which is very cool. I've had the same female business partner for the entire time. I'm very proud of that. And when Randy and actually, let's go back even before I started my companies. I went back to school to become a nutritionist in 1998. Because I wasn't feeling good. I had stomach issues. I had bloating and gas. And every time I ate anything, it just caused me so many issues. And I thought, and I started doing a lot of research on it because my personality is very much about going in and reading as much as I can. I like to become experts on the things that I want to become an expert on. And I started understanding food in our body and what we put in our body and how it affects us. So I thought, I'm doing all this research. I might as well go back to school to become a nutritionist so I can actually have a degree behind me and be credible. So I went back to school to become a nutritionist. And that really opened up my eyes to what we're eating and the food and, what we're putting in our body, how it fuels us, what we should be looking at, how we're all so different. Everybody's so different. What works for me may not work for you and vice versa. And I thought, okay, I loved it so much that I ended up approaching my business partner, her name is Randy, about starting a company in the health and wellness space. And this was back in 1999. And we started our first company in 2000. And then from there, we just started companies based on where we were at in our life. So our first book was, we just got married, we bought a house. It was a coupon book for natural and organic products. And everything's so expensive. I'm like, okay, let's start a coupon book and let's try to save money. And that lasted 18 years. And then we started another company called Naturally Savvy that's still up and running today. It's more of an educational site where we were talking to women who were 25 to 45, who were having babies and trying to make healthier choices for them and their families. And then when I got into, well, I guess when I was in my late 40s, I got my first hot flash. And that's when I thought, oh, am I in menopause? And that's where my life really took a completely different direction, to your point, that I thought, all right. And I went to Randy and I'm like, you know what? I think we should start a business in perimenopause and menopause. Let's focus on that because that's where we were at in the next stage of our life. And Randy is 2 years younger than me. She was going through perimenopause. I was at my late stages of perimenopause, unbeknownst to me, because I knew nothing about perimenopause. I didn't even know the word existed. I knew nothing. And I thought, well, wait a minute. How, if I don't know anything, my job is really to understand my body and so that I could share it with others. Maybe we need to really look deeper into this field and so that I can help myself and everyone else around us. And that's kind of how it morphed. No pun intended. Our company's called Morphus. That's kind of how it morphed into us starting our third business. And we started in 2021.
Oh, awesome. Awesome. Yeah. When I was in perimenopause, I knew something was up. I knew, but there definitely, the term wasn't really being used. My doctors definitely weren't talking about it, so it's good that we're paying more attention to it now and helping the younger women who are approaching that age so that they're a little bit better prepared than we were, right?
Oh my gosh, that's my goal. I was in perimenopause. So now looking back, I'm writing a book. It'll come out in 2026 on menopause. And I've done so much reflection on my life and where I was at and how I got here. And I now realize that I was in perimenopause for a total of 14 years. 11 of those years, I had no idea. And I realize now I started perimenopause in my mid 30s. So I was like, and back then I was having phantom smells. I was gaining and losing weight and sleep issues, and I was exhausted. I mean, so many things started happening to my body, and my body was changing. And I remember asking colleagues, friends, is this happening to you? Do you find that you wake up in a great mood and then you're like so angry or rageful or your moods are all over the place? And everyone was like, nope, not happening to me, not happening to me. And I was like, am I the only one? Like, what is going on? I had no words, no vocabulary for how I was feeling. So I felt very alone. I felt very deflated because I thought there was something wrong with me. And my goal, I have 3 kids. I have a son who's 21, a daughter who's 19, and a 13-year-old. I had my third at 41 when I was in perimenopause. Didn't know I was in perimenopause, but had my third child in perimenopause. And I'm like, my goal is that I do not want my girls and my son, one day when he gets married, to not have any idea what's happening to their body. So I am doing everything I can for us, our Gen X generation, our millennial generation, but also for Gen Zs and everyone else that follows, because I just don't want anyone not to have the vocabulary to understand what's happening to their body. It is a natural process that will happen to us if we are blessed to live long enough. Some of us, it'll be natural. Some of us will be, it'll be more induced or surgically induced. So but if we are blessed to live long enough, every woman will go through we'll go through menopause, not necessarily but we'll go through menopause.
Yeah. And I've fallen in love with your podcast, Menopause Reimagined.
Oh, thank you.
You've done so much work on this topic. And I've been studying it myself as well. And there was so many new facts and things that I learned through your research and the things that you're doing. So I'd love to get into that. I'd love to talk about the most surprising symptoms of menopause and what you've learned about it so far.
I'll take it a step back first, just to explain how I even came to understanding symptoms. So I've always, several years ago, I was at a party with my husband and I ran into an old friend and we were catching up. What are you doing? What are you doing? And she told me that she had started an app for women for menopausal symptoms. And at the time I had questioned her and say, are there actually that many symptoms that you would have to create an entire app for? Because you would need more than 1 or 2, right? Like if you're going to create an app, there's got to be enough. And she's like, oh, yeah, there's like 35 to 40 symptoms. And I was like, wow, that's a lot. And the way my brain works, I'm very analytical. My brain is very data driven. And I started a Google Doc and I started tracking all the different symptoms. So when you Google menopause or perimenopause symptoms, you'll see what comes up most of the time is 34 recognized symptoms. And you'll find that on a lot of the medical sites. You'll find that when you do your research. So I was like, well, wait, there's a lot more than 34. Why they keep repeating the number 34? And then I soon realized that there were like more than 85. And then I did more research and I thought, well, you know what? I'm going to go to our community. We have an incredible TikTok community. We're on social media. We have our website, wearemorphous.com. And I thought, well, why don't we ask the women in our community what they're experiencing? So we launched a signs and symptoms survey. It was our first groundbreaking survey that we launched back in 2022. And from that research, we now have 5,000 women who have answered the survey, which is incredible. So I'd love for your listeners, for those of you who are listening, please, Amy, if you can put a link below, go fill out our surveys. We have 10 of them on our website. We found that there are actually way more than 34, way more than 85. There are 103 plus symptoms of signs and symptoms of perimenopause and menopause. And now that I'm writing my book, and I was trying to find the original source for the 34, and you cannot find that original source. It was like someone who had mentioned it in a paper from like 2013. There was no studies on the 34. So what's very exciting for me and my team is the 103 plus symptoms of perimenopause and menopause are now going to be recognized because that abstract will be published in the journal Menopause in December, along with 3 other of our surveys. So it's very exciting to know that I'm now going to be a published menopause researcher, but also that there is validity behind the 103 plus symptoms.
Congratulations. That's amazing. That's awesome. And
Thank
I'm
you.
surprised and not surprised that there's that many, both at the same time.
Yeah, I think it's so many. So to your question about, what was the most surprising, there are a lot. So what I'll do is I'll start with the top 10 most common. And then I can talk about some of the more surprising ones because some of them might be in the top 10, some of them might not be. So the number one most common symptom across the board with over 70% of women, both in perimenopause and menopause, say fatigue and exhaustion. That's the number one symptom. And generally that will happen for women more so in perimenopause than menopause. So you might notice that's one of your first symptoms that may come about, whereas, you used to go a whole day, you had lots of energy, and now like by 2-3 o'clock, you're exhausted. Maybe you have to go to bed way earlier. You can't plow through your day the way you used to. So fatigue. Number 2 is brain fog. Number 3 is sleep issues. So there are a lot of different symptoms, a lot of different reasons that we're not sleeping. And I actually did a whole other survey on sleep issues because I wanted to know what those reasons were. Number 4 is memory loss, anxiety. I also have another survey on anxiety. So sleep issues, signs and symptoms, anxiety, and our doctor's visit surveys are the 4 abstracts that will be published in the journal Menopause. Then we have loss of libido, joint pain, lack of concentration, lack of focus, and hot flashes. For most of us, when you think of the word hot flashes, and when I speak to an audience, I always start my talk with, what's the first thing you think of when you think of the word menopause? And always it's hot flashes. And that was mine too. When I was 47 and I got my first hot flash, I was like, oh, am I in menopause? Like I had no idea all those symptoms I had experienced before were even related to perimenopause. I was like, oh, am I in menopause? Wait, isn't my grandmother in menopause? Like my mother? Like it was such an odd thing for me to think, am I that old? Am I no longer valid? And these are thoughts that went through my head. And now, and that is true for many women, like even friends of mine who, when I would ask, are you having these perimenopause symptoms? And they're like, no, 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 no. Like nobody wanted to talk about or acknowledge the fact that they were possibly perimenopausal or menopausal. So there was still that stigma attached to it.
Yeah.
And so that's for me, that was a big eye opener for me and why I went and did this research. So those are the top 10. In terms of surprising symptoms, I would say things like itchy ears is really surprising. A lot of women have that. BO, body odor. A lot of men will say they have body odor or their body odor is changing. It's more pungent now in one or both armpits. Bruising, you might have random bruising that shows up on your body. Crawling skin. A lot of women will say they have like bugs crawling, a feeling of bugs crawling on their skin. Phantom smells, when you're smelling things that other people aren't. That was one of the first symptoms that I had looking back. So yeah, there's a lot of symptoms and a lot of, I call them not so much surprising. I call them lesser known because they're common. They're common and they are surprising, but they're lesser known, but yet very common.
Phantom smells. What do you mean by that?
Phantom smells are when you smell something that doesn't actually exist in your environment. There could be lots of reasons for it. And that's why I always say, please go to your doctor, make sure you get checked out because it can be allergies. It can be other things that you always want to rule everything out. And so I wanted to understand because again, I would say that is probably one of the most surprising symptoms where women are like, what? I've been smelling smoke all the time and nobody else smells it. So if somebody else smells it and you have a heightened sense of smell, that's not a phantom smell. But if you smell it and it doesn't actually exist, that's a phantom smell. And it's a common symptom of perimenopause and menopause. So we actually have a white paper on our website on phantom smells. And the top 3 most common are smoke, and it can be any type of smoke: campfire, cigarette, cigar, burning wood. It doesn't matter. Smoke is number 1 by far. Then you have mildew and you have BO. So those are like the top 3. Yeah. So very, very common. So, and some people are like, but wait, if I'm smelling all these terrible smells like overheated electronics, cat pee, dog poop, rotten food, sulfur, rotten eggs. All of these are very common symptoms for phantom smells. But some women have good smells, like they smell blueberry muffins and chicken soup and chocolate chip cookies. And I'm like, oh, why couldn't I be one of those women? But I'm not. I actually had the not so good ones: burnt toast, burnt coffee. All of those are common phantom smells in perimenopause and menopause.
So some of those symptoms could be sort of just inconvenient or annoying. And some of them are pretty potentially debilitating, like really having a huge negative impact on just your day-to-day and your lifestyle. So how do you help with that? What do we do about the symptoms that are really getting in our way of being our best, healthiest self?
Symptoms can be extremely debilitating, which is what I had: debilitating symptoms. And I joke around, and it's not funny, that I probably had the 103 plus symptoms. Like I had a lot of them, not all of them, but I had a lot of them. My most debilitating symptoms, which completely interfered with my quality of life, were my hot flashes and night sweats, to the point where I couldn't get out of bed some days because I just knew, like, and the fatigue was also really bad. But the hot flashes were like, I couldn't get out of bed because I knew when I got out of bed, then I'd be like completely sweating, and then I'd have to like change my clothes. I couldn't get any work done. I mean, I would sit on a couch for a lot of the time because I knew they were coming so fast and furious. Like it was really debilitating. And actually, I thank my hot flashes now, because my hot flashes and night sweats are the reason I'm doing what I'm doing. I don't think if I had such debilitating symptoms, I don't know what if I would have gone down the rabbit hole that I did, or really started doing the research that I'm doing and started my supplement line because of it. But I thank them because I needed to find solutions. And my lane is nutrition, lifestyle, and supplements. And we have toolboxes. So the toolboxes, I always say, really should encompass nutrition, lifestyle, and supplements. And then there's also hormones for women who want to go down that route. You can use all of them, but I do want you at least to look at nutrition and lifestyle. Even if you're using hormones, please, nutrition and lifestyle are a foundation for everything. And I do believe supplements as well. I'm a nutritionist, but I do believe we need to supplement certain things. We can't out-supplement good nutrition, right? And then there's other things that take effect too. So let's start with nutrition. So to answer your question about how do we help ourselves, we know that as we go into perimenopause and menopause, we need to focus on whole foods. We need to eat more of foods that our body needs in this phase of life, like protein. We want to aim for about 30 grams of protein per meal. You want to look at eating lots of vegetables, eating the rainbow, green vegetables. We need a lot of fiber, and we get fiber from vegetables, our low glycemic fruit like berries and sour apples, and then our legumes, complex carbohydrates, and nuts and seeds in more moderation. We also want to look at eating good quality fats and eliminating fats that we know that can exacerbate certain symptoms or or create certain symptoms, like fats that we call seed oils. So really being mindful of not having canola oil or soy oil or vegetable oil that you'll get a lot in, restaurants, like grapeseed and rice bran, sunflower, soy. I'm just trying to think of there's like 8 of them. Dr. Kate Shanahan really put them on the map: cottonseed, corn. So these are ones that we want to be mindful of because they can create inflammation and oxidative stress in the body. And eat more of good quality oils like olive oil, avocado oil, like straight up avocado oil, a little bit of coconut oil, ghee, grass-fed butter, tallow. I mean, these are foods that we know are better for us. They're better quality oils, and that they won't, and for many of us, won't create that inflammation. And in fact, can help to reduce that inflammation that many of us are more prone to in this phase of life. So I say start with nutrition. It's really important. Then you want to make sure and also you're getting 25 to 35 grams of fiber, making sure you're drinking enough. We need to make sure we're hydrated. Hydration, a lot of us have dryness in this phase of life. Making sure you drink enough for several different reasons, including making sure things are moving through your digestive tract. So you're eating a lot more fiber, You want to make sure you are pooping at least once a day. I'm a nutritionist. I love talking about poop. That's like, for me, that's like second nature. But you want to make sure that you are pooping things out because you want to make sure that you're getting things out moving through your body and it doesn't get recirculated in your body. So that's important. And then you want to make sure you have movement and you want to make sure you're exercising and strength training. Really important. We're losing more muscle now than we're making, right? From bone health, obviously. So you want to make sure you're exercising, and then you want to make sure that you are managing your stress because to the best of your ability, because we are more stressed now. So we have another survey, as I mentioned, on anxiety. And we know, according to our research, that 66% of us are more stressed now than we were before we got into this phase of life. So looking to manage it some way, and 60% of the women who answered our survey, all of our surveys that we've analyzed have over 1,000 responses. And we wanted to make sure, like, we asked women what they're doing, and 60% said they're actually doing something to manage it. And the number one thing that the women say they do to manage their stress is watching a funny movie or a funny show, which I thought was really interesting. And then walks in nature, meditation, staying away from people who are toxic or people who are increasing their stress levels, being mindful of how much they're watching on the news, like a lot of different things, that spending time with family that they love, spending time with pets that they love. So there are a lot of different things that women are doing, which is amazing. So really finding something that works for you, because we're also less able to cope with our stress as we go into this phase of life. So doing something on the daily that can help you really, at least say you're not engaged in that stressful, feelings all the time. That's really important, so that you do, especially before bed, because we know that the number one thing that is keeping us up at night is stress. So whatever we can do to help manage that stress and go to bed in a more relaxed state is going to really help us, especially with getting a good night's sleep.
So much of what you say resonates with me. So for me, it was anxiety, like it just came on full force when I entered in my menopausal years. And it's to the point where before activities and things that I've been doing my whole life, like I've been a public speaker, I'm a former actress. And so there are things that never I had anxiety about, never. And now I have to manage it each time. It's come out of nowhere. So
Yeah.
there's natural ways to manage that and minimize that for ourselves.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Like the things that I mentioned, like any of that really is helpful. That's more like doesn't cost any money. It's an easy way to manage it. Your deep breathing, your meditation, like setting timers on your phone. If you find that, that you're not, because breathing is important, right? We want to get those deep breaths, not the shallow breaths. So maybe every couple of hours, setting a timer on your phone to help you remind you to breathe. Right. So anything that's going to help to relax you, and whatever that is, going for a walk in nature, smelling the flowers, grounding, walking barefoot, obviously not in the winter, but in the summer months, in the warmer months. And if you can, depending where you live, walking on the sand, walking on the grass, grounding is really helpful. Just quieting your mind. And it doesn't have to be, meditation where you're just, sitting there for 20 minutes. It can literally just be you closing your eyes for a minute and just coming back to center, right? Just yoga, exercise, any of that is going to help you manage your stress. And also what you're eating is going to help as well. So there are certain things that can exacerbate stress, like alcohol, like ultra processed sugar, right? Like simple carbohydrates, any of that, which turn into sugar in the body, those can exacerbate anxiety and stress. So you want to look to eating foods that are going to nourish you so that it doesn't, anything that's going to escalate it, you want to try to calm it. And I do believe in supplements. I'm a huge believer in supplements. When we're stressed, and there's foundational supplements for women in perimenopause and menopause. So when we're stressed, we deplete magnesium from our body. And when magnesium is depleted, we become more stressed. It's really important that we get enough magnesium from our diet and also to supplement with it, because most of us aren't absorbing all the magnesium we're eating, and we need a lot of it. And there was a study that was done last year that looked at magnesium levels in women in menopause and their brain health. So we know that we need a good amount of magnesium. So making sure you have enough. So if your eyes are twitching or you have muscle spasms or muscle cramps or you're waking up with Charlie horses, all of that could be related to the fact, or restless legs, that you don't have enough magnesium. So I'm a big fan in supplementing with magnesium. Magnesium bisglycinate, which is the kind that we have at Morphus, which is everything that we have, our supplements, I'm very intentional with and about. I always make sure that I don't want you to have to take things that you don't necessarily need. But if you do need it, I'm intentional with what we have. So magnesium bisglycinate, glycine is attached to it. Glycine helps us to relax. It's an amino acid that helps us to relax. Taking it before bed, you can take magnesium bisglycinate during the day and it'll actually give you energy. And when you take it at night, it'll help to relax you so that you could sleep better. It's one of those really cool supplements that you can take that will be very beneficial no matter what time of the day that you're taking it. And then we also have a product called Sleep Us. I formulated it, and we take it with our magnesium. And Sleep Us has an ingredient called lactium. Lactium, there's 3 clinical trials that show on humans that show that it helps to regulate cortisol. So remember when I said earlier that the main reason that we're waking up in the middle of the night is because of stress? That's because most of us are waking up between 2 and 4 a.m. That means that our cortisol is rising at the wrong time. So taking a product like our Sleep Bus will help to regulate cortisol so that you can sleep through the night. And if you do wake up, you can go back to bed because it also has sustained release melatonin. It has L-theanine that helps to relax the brain and a little bit of our mag. But taking that combo, it's called our cortisol calm bundle, helps you get that better night's sleep. And I'm big on wearables. You could see literally sleep is my obsession because we need to make sure that we focus on sleep and digestion in this phase of life because those are the pillars for so many different things. And that combination will help you get a better night's sleep, more deep sleep. I had over 2 hours of deep sleep last night. That's our restorative sleep. So taking it, 30 to 40 minutes before bed, to me, it's so valuable because it'll help you get that good night's sleep that so many of us need and are not getting.
I have a couple questions on that.
Sure.
So first, you mentioned that one of your toughest symptoms was the hot flashes, right?
Yes.
And you may or may not want to discuss this, but did you manage that with hormone therapy or did you manage it naturally?
So I found, it's a great question. I found the solution naturally with pycnogenol and DIM. So those are 2 supplements that I found worked really well for me. So I tried hormone therapy. I don't talk about hormones because it's out of my lane and I'm not an expert. And I always say I really defer to the experts whose lane it is. So my lane is nutrition, lifestyle, supplements, and research, right? So that's my lane. So I tried it well after that I'd already had my symptoms under control. I wanted to understand what it felt like because so many women in our community were on it. But to manage my hot flashes, and it is indicated for that, but I ended up doing it naturally with pycnogenol and DIM in my diets.
Great. Okay. Awesome. And then my other question is, because we all experience this time of life so differently and the way that it impacts us physically, mentally, emotionally, it's different from woman to woman. How do we figure out which supplements we need and what's going to work best for us?
So I always say so we have our foundation. So I mentioned the magnesium, the omega-3s is foundation for me, I believe, and fiber. So those are the 3 foundation supplements that every woman in perimenopause and menopause should consider. We don't get enough fiber. Most of us are getting maybe half the amount of fiber that we should. And I talked about the importance of fiber. It also helps with keeping us full and all the other things we talked about. Omega-3s are great because many of us experience dryness as we go into this phase of life, especially watery eyes, dry mouth, dry vaginas, dry everything, right? Itchy ears. All of that is due to dryness. Omega-3s, they help to hydrate us from the inside out. So taking omega-3s, we have an omega-3 tea. It's a fish oil. I take 3 soft gels a day, and that helps to keep my dryness at bay. So if you are suffering from any of the dryness symptoms, I highly recommend looking for a good quality fish oil. You want a triglyceride form, and you want one that has enough omega-3s in it, so DHA to EPA. So those are the foundation. Then I say, listen to your body. So if you are having really crazy hot flashes, maybe you want to look at pycnogenol. If you're in perimenopause, you have sore breasts, pycnogenol and DIM can be very helpful. And pycnogenol, it has so much research on it, and it can help with 30 different symptoms, which is what I love and why we launched it as part of our Morphus lineup of products. So we have symptom-specific things that you can look at. If you're having blood sugar issues, you've got berberine. If you're having, depending on what it is, we have something called tocotrienols, which is part of the vitamin E family. And I love tocotrienols because it's an antioxidant. Pycnogenol, by the way, can also help with hair growth. But So can tocotrienols. I have like little baby hairs everywhere, and it's literally because I'm taking tocotrienols and pycnogenol. So there's certain things, and it also helps with heart health, and it helps with like skin health. Like we have it all on our website to tell you what it is, what it helps with. So you could see what works best for you. I don't recommend getting a gazillion different things because you don't necessarily need it, but get what your body needs. And also, what are you trying to prevent? What are you trying to work on? At the end of the day, your quality of life, and I'm all about empowering you to take control of your health and your symptoms. And that's where Morphus products come in, because I want you to take what your body needs. And if you have questions, reach out to me. My team and I are super accessible. I'm a nutritionist. We have someone else on our team who's a nutritionist. We can't give advice, obviously, but what we can do is tell you, is tell you what the products help with according to the research. And that's the important thing for me. It's not just, I'm not telling you to take it because I feel like telling you. I'm telling you because that's what the research says that it helps with.
Excellent. Excellent. And the other thing that I really have enjoyed about your podcast, Menopause Reimagined, is that you cover all the topics, like the things that we don't necessarily talk about with our girlfriends, or we don't go as into it as we'd like to. And so I've listened to the last a few different episodes that you've done about sex and sexual health, and I loved it because it was just a very open, straightforward conversation about stuff that many of us face and, want to and need to talk about. So thank you for addressing that.
Oh, you're welcome. And we actually have a libido survey. We just reached the 1,000 mark. So I'm going to have that analyzed. But please, again, go through our survey because all of our surveys are ongoing. So we always reanalyze. So yeah, we just reached 1,000 responses, which I'm so excited. And I'm all talking about sexual health because it's a big issue for us. And we have to talk openly about it because a lot of women are having a lot of issues.
Yeah. Well, I'll definitely participate in that survey, and I'll make sure that the link is in the show notes. So any final thoughts or comments for the listeners today?
I would say just if you're going through a lot of symptoms right now, I want you to know that there is hope, there is help. I don't want you to feel like you're helpless, because there's so many things you can do. Like I talked about, like I mentioned in our toolbox. So if you have questions, you can go to our website, you can reach out to us. I'm happy to, point you in directions. And I would say be gentle with yourself because it does get better as you go into menopause. And I know myself, speaking personally, I could be very hard on myself a lot of the time, but being gentle with ourselves and really going with where you're at is important. So one of the other debilitating symptoms, not so much, let me rephrase. My hot flashes and night sweats were debilitating. Another major symptom that I had, especially in perimenopause, as a very much of a type AAA personality, I had a lot of issues with lack of focus and lack of concentration, like to the point where I couldn't even work. And I'm an entrepreneur. And for me, that's what I've been doing for 25 years. So learning that this is where you're at, be gentle with yourself, go with where you're at, and try to be gentle with yourself and not punish yourself for what you're going through, because that doesn't help anybody, especially you. So I would say that's probably the biggest message I want you to take away is don't beat yourself up over it and just be kind to yourself.
Very well said. This has been very informative. Thank you. Thank you so much. I have really enjoyed the conversation. Thanks for being here today.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Thank you for joining us for today's episode of the Blueprint Breakers podcast. Is this menopause? And a very special thank you to my guest, Andrea Donsky of Morphus. Thank you again for listening and sharing this episode with your friends. This episode is especially important for our younger friends in their 30s and 40s. Let's help get the word out about how to prepare for this important season. I would like to quickly share my disclaimer. I am not a therapist, doctor, lawyer, financial advisor, etc. This podcast is for your entertainment and information only. I encourage you to take what I share here as a launching point to discover what is right for you. Have a great week. Keep on breaking those blueprints and rewriting your own.